Charlie Kirk, of course, yesterday was tragically killed. And although there is still a lot that we don't know about the killer or their motivation, Donald Trump is not pausing for a second to get as much out of this as he can. Now, he put up this video online, and there was a brief bit that almost sounded like he was gonna go in a responsible direction. He said, "It's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible." So there are some politicians that could say that, and that could be accurate and would make sense. There's kind of the issue that there is nobody in recent American politics that has spent more time demonizing the people he disagrees with than Donald Trump. And I'm not just talking about politicians or political commentators, although he does that constantly. I'm talking about judges and lawyers, activists, cable news hosts. He does celebrities, Beyonce, Oprah. He demonizes people constantly. And by the way, check your own side, because in response to the shooting, to go back to Matt Walsh, he literally said, quote, "We are up against demonic forces from the pit of hell." He's not figuratively demonizing his opponents. He's literally demonizing them. He is referring to them as demons. So talk to your own people, please. But anyway, he goes on and here's more of what he had to say last night.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
Okay, I'm gonna bring in Jordan in just a sec. I just have to respond to 1 or 2 things there. So first of all, he included acts of political violence there that were perpetrated by right wingers, including the guy who tried to take him out in Butler. For some reason, he's calling that left-wing violence. I will never understand that. He's also, of course, leaving out all of the attacks against Democrats and leftists, which we're going to fill in there. But yeah, again, this guy has inspired so much. He was talking about people who go after judges. He constantly attacks and demonizes judges. He said people who go after law enforcement. January 6th. Remember, you pardoned the people that went after law enforcement. You sent them back out there to commit more acts of political violence. So I'm not gonna forget that. Now that said, Mehdi Hassan put up a great list of all of the recent political violence that Trump decided conveniently not to list there. We can put that up. There's a lot, obviously. We cover it on the show, Nancy Pelosi and Melissa Hortman, and there's a lot of instances like this. But the issue is that to acknowledge those would be responsible, it would be presidential, but it would undercut what Donald Trump clearly wants to do, which is to use this as a pretext for state suppression of the Democratic Party, Democratic politicians, activists, donors, NGOs. That appears to be what's coming. I hope, Jordan, that it's not, but that's my fear. What do you think?
Yeah, and like you pointed out on hour 1 last night, this is what they wanted. And it seems like this is the pretext that allows them to pursue that with impunity. I hope they don't, but it seems like that's the next step. Now, there's a couple things that I want to point out here. The dehumanizing language that Trump condemns in that video about Kirk never applies to anybody on the right, certainly not himself. He has called liberals and Democrats, immigrants specifically, a frequent target. Many different dehumanizing terms, animals, vermin, they're poisoning the blood of this country. That's all rooted in white nationalism and certainly has led to violence. We're seeing state violence being carried out right now. They don't care about that because for them, it's about punishing your perceived enemy. That's how politics works for the right. And I do want to point out though, I think we lose sight of the ultimate problem here when we have a narrow focus. I know Mehdi Hassan is on the right side and he means well and he's just making a specific point, but I do see this often when it comes to political violence like this, and it's trying to paint it as a partisan problem. And I think we're losing sight of the real problem, which is guns in this country. This is a uniquely American problem. I mean, while media was focused on the assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday, a school shooting occurred in Colorado. And I know you raised that on hour one, and there was some time dedicated to that. But I feel like for a lot of people, that's just white noise because it happens so frequently. But again, it only happens here. The problem is the proliferation of guns. And I would warn everyone, while we're talking about this political violence, which is a problem, recognize that is an extension of the proliferation of firearms in this country.
Yeah. No, you are totally right. And again, there was other gun violence yesterday. And so it is a constant problem. And you gave a lot of great instances of the dehumanization. What does Donald Trump call the governor of California again? New scum? He's scum. Just normalize it. He's scum, okay? That's what he does. Like this guy, it's constant from him, talking about poisoning the blood, fantasizing about migrants being eaten by alligators, eaten by sharks. These are the people telling us that we need to be more responsible with our language. By the way, I think everybody needs to be responsible with their language, and I can say that comfortably because I feel like I am. And I feel like I always have been. It's the right that does it on a very case-by-case basis. I feel like the vast majority of the people on the left have never had a problem with this. Have you listened to Steve Bannon? Have you listened to Alex Jones? All of these shows are bathed in blood, fantasizing about the storm coming and rounding up their opponents and executing all of them. That is very normalized on the right. And there are so many other acts of violence that we could talk about in the conspiracy theorists and El Paso, and we could talk about Tree of Life. We could talk about all of these things. But it is a significant problem, and it is not a problem that is on both sides, except in the most technical sense. It is a problem that is almost always for one side. The issue is that when those acts happen, they don't generally dominate the news. Certainly not for long, certainly not to the extent that this does. And by the way, I understand why there's as much coverage of this. It's a horrendous thing that happened to a prominent figure. It also happened on tape, which, let's just keep it real, that makes it much realer for people. Melissa Hortman was brutally murdered by an assassin, but we don't have video of it. And so it seems less real, and it's close to home too, More, like I was saying before the show, something like 72 Palestinians have been killed by the IDF so far today, but that's all the way over there. And so I understand all of these trends in the media and everything, but just understand that Donald Trump, the other right-wing ghouls and monsters that are trying to weaponize this tragedy for their own benefit, that's what they're pursuing goals that they already had.